Okay, finally got you through there, Caleb. How you going? Had some
Right.
technical issues there to begin with.
Sorry.
We had some technical issues to begin with, but good to hear your voice, mate.
Yeah, we're gonna have to maybe cut this video a little bit to begin with. Yeah.
I
Um,
was just
struggling to get a
saying,
camera to just
yeah,
struggling to get a camera to connect at the moment. That's one issue I'm having.
that's all right. If necessary, we can just do the chat with audio. You can muck around in the background and see if you can get it going if you like. I
Cool.
was just saying that in part one of our chat, we got to cover a range of topics regarding the state, and it was on the night of the 2025 federal election, and we were speculating and we were discussing a range of topics, policies, finances, deals that our government was making with other nations. So
Yeah.
we even got to talk about the 4 day work week. So that was a good fun chat, and I'm excited to catch up with you again to kind of continue the chat. How have you been in the meantime?
Yeah, not too bad. I've just been studying and living life in Wollongong. Life hasn't got too much worse yet, so I can say the evil tyranny of the Labor Party hasn't really taken grip.
Yeah, well, their influence is continuing through taking lots of our hard-earned taxpayer dollars and funding programs and policies that maybe aren't in the best interests of Australians. But we can get into that at some point during the chat. Uh,
Sure.
but I won't sort of hold you up too long today because I know you've got to head off to uni at some point. We've maybe got about 40 minutes to catch up if you've got time for that, and then I'll be
Yeah,
talking.
we've got time to catch up, Dad.
Excellent, awesome. So, look, I guess in the couple of weeks since we've had our last chat, you and I have talked quite a number of times, just personally, and there's been a lot going on. It seems like the news cycle's speeding up, and in Australia, we've got a situation where we're finding ourselves potentially needing to pick sides with great superpowers. On one hand, in Australia, we've got uh, security deals that we're trying to fulfill with the US and the AUKUS deal with the UK. We've got this on one hand, and then on the other hand, we've got trade that we need to do with the Eastern powers like China. So the government's trying to have it both ways. How do you see these things, from, I guess, your demographic and society? How do you see Australia's policy to these two very separate issues, yet they are connected in terms of our overall strategic place in the world and our security?
Um, well, I think there's a line being drawn in the sand, I guess you could say. And United States at the moment, Donald Trump specifically, is really kind of enforcing that at the moment. And I think it comes from a place of understanding that within the not too distant future, like relatively speaking, within the next 10 to 15 years, there's a pretty high likelihood of a significant conflict between powerful nations. I'm talking Russia, China, United States, Europe, whether it's the United Kingdom or France, Germany. Um, I think there's a pretty clear understanding that at some point in time we're going to need to choose a side is not really the greatest way of describing it, but we need to orient ourselves more or less, it seems, for a wartime economy and really having our trading partners and allies determined before all of that begins to happen is kind of what I see happening right now. Is the United States is more or less demanding we choose whether we're going to remain loyal to them, or if we can't handle that, then it's not that they're going to abandon us, but the other powers are more than happy to fill that power vacuum.
Mm. And I guess one of the traps that I'm kind of there you are. G'day, mate.
Got it away. There we go.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. So, and this is kind of one of the traps that psychologically, I hope Australians don't kind of fall into, because yes, the bigger powers, in my view, are going to try and compel us to pick a side. They're going to use all of the levers that they can um, to co-opt us into, you know, their narrative over time. But I see this as a unique, pivotal opportunity for Australians to be wiser than falling into one or the other side of East and West, and essentially potentially creating an Australia that sits outside those power structures, that wants to be, you know, a friend to both in different ways. And that is a complex task to achieve. Obviously, it requires amazing statesmanship, and a total rethink of policy, and maybe even, you know, trade and economics and other things. But we shouldn't shy away as a nation from potentially doing our own thing, and not being a threat to either, but being a trading partner to both. Um, you know, we're in a pretty unique position in our place in the world to do that. And I could throw a few other countries into that kind of that mix that don't need to be involved in essentially what could be wars in the Northern Hemisphere. You know, countries like New Zealand and others could realistically position themselves to be non-participants in any military activity, but it does raise the flag that we are going to need to enter a wartime footing, but on for what reason? I think we need to have a wartime footing to mobilise our populations, to re-gear our economy, and to be, just like in martial arts, as well prepared for self-defense as possible. But it's a self-defense posture rather than an aggressive posture. So it's a complex thing, but I hope that we don't get too caught up, just like in politics with, you know, Liberal and Labor as being you know, the main two options that people kind of think about or talk about. I hope that we don't end up in a situation where it's, you know, China or the US. You know, I think there's multiple other factors out there that could see a much brighter future for Australia. And we talked about in our first chat, you know, the vast resources that in the land here in Australia, and the opportunity for population growth and development and other things that could see Australia over time, with good policies, rise to be a superpower in the next 100 years in its own right. There's going to be a lot of potential, as you've outlined, chaos in the Northern Hemisphere, which is going to see a lot of refugees and others that will want a place of security and peace that aren't part of, you know, a wider conflict. And potentially we could position this nation in that space where those people can come to live peaceful, flourishing lives, and we're not the target of a superpower through taking sides unnecessarily. So, I guess, yeah, I'm optimistic if we can maintain that position of, I guess, almost like a mediator, not invested in either one too much, but wanting a peaceful outcome. Obviously, I'm not confident with current leadership styles. or people to take us on that journey. So, but I am hopeful. We did in our break in between chats. I sent you a video of a promising uh, new Australian political party, that are considering some of these sort of options. So that gives me hope that there's political parties out there that are starting to think outside the box.
Yeah. Um, you're giving me a bit to digest there. um, so
It's only 8:30, I should say. So I apologise, mate. I've had two coffees already. So
yeah, I'm looking at an empty energy drink can right now and thinking that's definitely my next move. But there's a few things. I'd say to begin with, we need to look at things realistically when it comes to China. And we have to be honest with ourselves if truthfully they really are, it is within our interest to be close with China economically, socially, as a country, as nations. Is it really in Australia's best interest take to try and play both sides with two very, very different styles of lifestyles, leadership, everything? I think China does not really respect Australia the way that the United States does, more so in a way that they look at us as a very important strategic asset, but they don't respect our autonomy. I think the ships going up and down the coastline of Australia for the last 6 months is a good indication that they really, more than anything, are sizing us up to see how easy we are to eat. Really, I mean, they're doing the same thing in Taiwan. They don't respect the sovereignty of Taiwan, and they don't like the fact that the United States can benefit so heavily from their chip manufacturing.
mm,
Um, so there are lines in the sand being drawn right now between these two countries, and the same goes really for what China can bring to Australia. I mean, at the moment, it's really an unfair relationship that we have with them. We export our coal, and in return, we buy solar panels, and Australians cover the difference. Like it's a broken system, and we're being taken advantage of. So I think more than anything, what really needs to happen is we need to be able to see things clearly for how they are. And I mean, we lost our Ford and Holden dealerships back in 2015 or 16.
mm,
And since then, I've seen a BYD dealership open up in the city here in Wollongong. It replaced the BMW dealership, which obviously moved further down the road. They're not going to remove the BMW dealership, but there's Chinese electronics, Chinese vehicles, Chinese technology. It is not. It may be cheap and it may benefit us in the short term, but really, I don't believe that it's more a corrosive thing than it is a beneficial thing for us in Australia. And at the end of the day, they don't look at us as someone who is equal to them. They look at us as someone who is, or a country that is more or less just serving a purpose to them.
mm. Would you agree that America sees us in that way, though, too? They don't see us as an equal, and they want to use our land strategically to keep, to keep the Chinese heads down, so to speak. But I agree in that, you know, we have a situation where we've got trade occurring with China, uh, and those materials that are mined here are going away and coming back as complex consumer goods and other things. Um, China could still trade with us in the raw materials, and we could build our own sovereign uh, cars. We could do other things like renewables if we wanted to. Um, it's just that we're not geared for that at this stage, and I guess China is reacting as well to Western pressures. The freedom of navigation, that is spouted by, Western governments to be able to sail through any, international waters at any time is their right. And so when the West has been flexing their muscles doing that all around the world for decades, it's only natural that as other powers rise and form the capability to do the same thing, that they're going to do it. It would be a bit hypocritical of the West to say that China can't, do things like sail down through international waters around Australia, while they're doing the same thing through the Chinese Strait, or the South China Sea. Um, so I agree with you entirely that the way that we trade with China is not necessarily the right thing, but I think trade with China is the right thing. It's just, how do we do it? We've only got, what, 25, 30 million people in Australia at this stage, which is, one major city in China. So, of course they're going to not look at us as a peer. They are going to see us as a nation that has resources. I don't think they want to be in a kinetic hot war with anyone. I think they would rather do economic deals to maintain stability around the world. And they're doing a better job of it than the West, I think. They've managed to draw in a lot of the poorer nations of the world into the BRICS, the establishment, which is a new financial structure for those Eastern Bloc countries, or the Eastern Axis countries, I should say. So they're trying to assert soft power around the world, and they've been very good at that. And the West is failing in a lot of ways at the soft power game, and so it's had to go kinetic along a lot of fronts to try and hold back the softer power of these larger nations, populace wise. So I guess I'm just excited that these subjects are coming up in the media at the moment about AUKUS deals, submarines and other things that are a 20-year project. Are just not going to cut it for Australia. It's we're relying on the fine print of the contract that America will essentially visit ports with its nuclear submarines in the meantime to provide a deterrent capacity. And, that's a lot of money for us to pay. You and me, your children, and maybe even their children will be paying for these invisible submarines that may never eventuate.
I
So,
believe the United States actually overruled our deal, and they've said that it's not going to happen.
okay, sorry, I just took a sip on my coffee there.
That's all right.
So yeah, they overruled. Which part of the deal are you talking about?
I don't believe they're giving us submarines.
I think they're reviewing it, but I think the UK and the US are still holding Australia to account for the contract. So I'm not sure on those specific parts that you're talking about, but we have signed a deal. I think there's over $800 million that's already been spent. And that's a lot of money as a down payment. Look, I'm all for I guess a self-defense posture or a mobilization, so that Australia can gear its industry towards manufacturing things. Foremost would be cars, for a fleet that Australia could call its own and build in times of shipping lanes being closed or other things because other people go to war. So those sort of things I think are absolutely essential at this stage. While we've got relative peace and calm in this region of the world, we could be proactive and not, unfortunately waiting for the time for conflict to erupt in the South China Sea and then trying to establish some sort of local car manufacturing economy, that would be very difficult at that point.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what we're discussing here is while I believe the United States has come to the more or less come to a conclusion that is similar to what we're talking about, which is um, bracing themselves for serious um, economic isolation and manufacturing. I think they're really converting their economy towards being more self sufficient,
Mm.
and that's been the demand of all nations around the world. Is that um, and it's not necessarily true that these nations were ripping off the United States, but um, there is some truth to the fact that the United States cannot be expected to uphold peace and security around the world by itself, with all of our nations, all the Western nations around it, relying on it essentially to be that security.
Mm.
Um,
I guess it would be kind of like, uh, America, I agree with you in that America is kind of like the global policeman, or has been at least for the last few decades. They've established garrison style states all around the world. And what they're realizing is that they can't fund those various activities. It's costing them trillions of dollars that's disappearing. They can't account for it. Um, and they're realizing that it's not a sustainable posture to have around the world. They can't be the world's policeman, even though they said they wanted to be and tried to be. And now they're just looking for a off ramp that saves them embarrassment. And they're saying, okay, well, we couldn't do what we said we were going to do and provide, stability through force in various areas. And now we're going to pull out and you guys have to pay for that. Now, I kind of understand it because at some point you got to change it if it's unsustainable. But I don't think they're being honest. They went into those areas for um, not just stability. They used that as, I guess the soft, public policy. But really, there was a lot of resource gathering, regime change, a lot of things that would be considered nefarious by other nations around the world. So uh, I kind of understand why they're pulling out. The American taxpayers are also going to be, what are they up to, $35 trillion in debt. Um, so, the Americans are going to be paying for this for generations as well. Uh, so it doesn't, in my view, this is the point where everyone should be talking and understanding that uh, we're going through a seismic shift in geopolitics. It's a chance for everyone to restabilize themselves without it necessarily becoming kinetic. Because each week that passes by, as you've probably seen now, there's a new front that's opened up around Thailand and Cambodia. So that's starting to creep down into our region, and you can see the future battle lines kind of being drawn. And if we're not taking some sort of action, at least talking about it, um, then we're not going to be ahead of the curve. We're just going to get caught up in it.
yeah, I mean, what we want is not war. We don't want war with anyone, in
No.
all honesty. Like, that's obviously true. And
Mm,
I think China also doesn't necessarily want war. Um, I think it's more or less just it feels like the world is slowly ramping up to we're reaching a tipping point because there's too many powerful interests out there fighting for the same things,
mm,
and each one poses a existential threat to the other.
mm,
Um, Obviously, between the United States and Russia, they have enough nuclear weapons to bomb every large populated city 3 times around the world. Um, both sides pose a totally existential threat to each other and have the ability to completely eradicate each other.
Mm.
Um, and that's not even mentioning like a conventional warfare where troops will be sent to fight on battlefields, which, in my opinion, seems to be something that will be a thing of the past in the not too distant future. Um,
Mm.
you can see in Ukraine at the moment, drone warfare is really what's going, and even in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, it's drone warfare and it's intercontinental ballistic missiles that are being fired at each other. There's no, well, there's still conventional battles being fought with men on the ground, but um, it seems to be that it's not, it's the least effective strategy at the moment. It seems to cost a lot of lives and it doesn't yield much of an effect.
Mm.
I mean, that's been that war in Ukraine has been more or less a stalemate now for 3 years.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that from the West point of view, they are happy to use that country as a testing ground. They want to move the big companies in there, the Black Rocks and other things to test technologies, tactics. Um, the infrastructure that they want to establish over rare earth sites and other things will need protection, security details, all that sort of stuff. So it's a good cover for activities, and I think they're prepared to allow Ukraine to even collapse while they learn about Russian technological capabilities. So every time they send a drone into Russia, it's collecting data, it's talking to satellites, it's listening for ground radars that are identifying it. It's mapping them all and sending them back to Palantir and other sophisticated AIs that very over time build a very detailed picture of the Russian ground defenses. So if there's 500 drones being sent in a week, each one of those drones is potentially flying different paths, identifying risks, identifying vulnerabilities, so that one day, if the West chooses to, they've got a very detailed map of the infrastructure that Russia has, and they can then use other weapons instead of drones potentially um, to decapitate or totally take out the military capabilities of Russia. Maybe balkanize it. I think we talked about this, maybe not on our last chat, but we've
We've
definitely talked.
spoken about this stuff.
Yes, separately.
What? Well, the United States, obviously, I've spoken about this with you a few times, but the sixth generation fighter jet has been announced and is
Mm.
currently in production for the United States. Now, we don't necessarily know much about it, but from what I've heard, it's believed to be something, an unmanned fighter jet or a jet that can be manned or unmanned. And it will utilize a similar drone technology to what it will be essentially a small fleet of ships per ship rather than a manned F-35 or whatever they are.
Yeah.
Um, and I think these are obviously hypersonic um, jets as well. I mean, to me, it seems like in the West, especially, we won't be fighting. I mean, the people in the West here, there are some that are willing to fight, but I don't think it's really what's going to happen. I don't believe that men on the ground is really what will be happening in future conflicts. And I think the United States knows this. They're preparing more for a technological warfare, like robotic
Mm.
warfare. They're developing all of these new robots you see coming out of. Trying to remember the name of that. There's those dancing robots you see, and
Boston.
yeah, that's the one. And even with the U.S. military parade, they showed the robotic dogs.
Yeah.
Um, like I think that we're going to see some seriously hybrid warfare, but
Mm.
it's hard to
Yeah.
say. We're not seeing large scale conflict at the moment, other than maybe Ukraine and Russia. But it sounds insensitive, but it's not exactly anything new what we're seeing over there at the moment.
Mm. No, I agree with you. That it's not that it's insensitive. I think that we're just desensitized to the conflicts that are going on overseas. It's the way that our media portrays it to us. It makes it almost like a game show and talks about the leaders of various nations and military commanders like they're contestants on a game show. That's the way that people are kind of interviewed. It's the way it's portrayed. So it takes the humanity in some ways out of the raw situation. There's cities that are being leveled across Europe, in Ukraine, and now in the Middle East, in places like Palestine, and I'm sure there's areas of Iran that are leveled as well now. So these things are real. There's ongoing disputes in India and Pakistan, which are part of this east-west divide provocation, and now, as we mentioned, in Thailand and Cambodia. I guess just to kind of tie a bow in that, there is a lot going on. Australia is not a key player at this stage in anything, so it doesn't really matter what we do with our current governance. We're not being listened to. There's no real respect for our leadership out there in the rest of the world, in my view. And
Well, I
there's
mean, Donald Trump hasn't even acknowledged Anthony Albanese's existence. I think he might have acknowledged it when he won the election and said, "Yeah, he's a great guy," but he didn't even want to meet with him at the G7.
No, he took off. But Albanese
He sat
at
there
the at the
expecting him.
at the taxpayers' expense flew all the way there to be snubbed by
How
Trump.
embarrassing! How
Very
embarrassing!
embarrassing. Very embarrassing. But that could all change with good leadership and a totally different political posturing, I believe. I think Australia can get Donald's attention quite quickly, but it takes the right people and the right policies. Um, anyway, on a separate note, we talked really briefly uh, last time about. Oh no, we didn't talk much last time. I talked with Dave Hogan, your granddad, my dad, uh, about a text that you sent me about the Epstein files, and we had a bit of a joke about it. In fact, I'm talking to him after I talked to you, but I just thought I'm interested as to why you sent me that text about the Epstein files. Have you heard something new? I'll just kind of, while you think about it, I'll paint the picture a bit. But there's been ongoing discourse in America about these Epstein files, and
I've been following it.
yeah, and so Trump is said there's nothing to see here a few weeks ago, and forget about it, kind of thing. Um, and as it turns out, one of the younger ladies was actually working at his Mar-a-Lago spa, let's call it, and she was, let's call it, poached by Mr. Epstein from that spa. Trump has said she was taken, so there's interesting language going on there. Uh, we've got, discussions around videos going missing, missing 62 seconds. We've got, poor practices going on in.
Footage from within the jail. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So is there something in particular regarding the Epstein that you wanted to touch on?
Well, it sounds like you and I are both across it pretty much the same amount. I think obviously Trump administration, well, the Trump campaign to begin with in 2024 made a big mistake in they really recruited the conspiracy theorist types. They were trying to appeal to them the best they could. I mean, they were appearing on Joe Rogan. Um, I mean, well, Joe Rogan's a good example. I mean, I think Trump promised to release the Epstein files on that, and he also promised to release the Epstein files on Fox. Um, they asked him if he was president, would he release the files, and he said yes, after pausing briefly. Um, yeah, look, it's not a great look. He's made many mistakes along the way. He had Pam Bondi get up and say that she had the Epstein files on her desk and handed them out to a bunch of conservative, quote unquote, influencers who were really just embarrassed by the fact that they had given them no new information. And then after that, Trump is accused by Elon of being in the Epstein files. And as far as I can tell, Trump at that point just tried to deny even the fact that he's involved or that they exist at all. So we've
Yeah.
gone from we will release the files to there are no files. And I saw a report the other day that Pam Bondi has revealed to Donald Trump that his name is in the files. But I mean, what that really practically means, I don't think it really makes much of a difference at this point. I mean, Bill Clinton, obviously, you've got there's so many. Whoopi Goldberg, I believe, as well. Like there's a lot of big names on those flight logs.
Hmm.
So Trump's name being on there, as much as it is really bad optics, and the implications of it are terrible, potentially. So I'm not aware of what you were talking about with this poaching of young girls from his Mar-a-Lago estate, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's regardless of how you look at it, it's not a good look, and I suppose maybe in time it will be revealed, or maybe he's hoping that eventually, if he'll ignore it until it goes away, or just keep denying it until eventually people start believing him.
yeah. Look, I think my sense of this is just based on what I've heard, that there is an involvement of intelligence agencies, particularly the Israeli Mossad, in handling Epstein as an asset, and providing a lot of, I guess, cover for him to be able to operate in the way that he did, knowing that there is a lot of salacious evidence that they can gather. That house on Epstein Island was meant to have many videos recording in various covert video cameras recording in places to catch people in compromising acts and then hold it over them. It's the perfect honey trap. Intelligence agencies have been doing it for decades, and they hold on to that footage and then use it as blackmail effectively, or leverage over the people if they need something done, or if that person is going to go public with a policy of that particular intelligence agency, they will ruin your life, essentially. And, a lot of intelligence agencies play in that space. They look for the dirt so that they can use it at some stage. It's enormously powerful. And, if that is the case, Trump might be beholden to the information they hold. And, it might go some way to explaining why he and so many others in those higher elite levels are sort of bending over for the Israelis, let's say.
Look, you and I don't share the same view on the United States relationship with Israel. I can say that much, but I I don't necessarily buy the narrative that the United States is being essentially marionetted by Israel. I don't believe that's the case. I can see where you're coming from, but it seems to me more that it's a case of literally elite evil people with too much money and influence. And I mean, it's obviously benefiting the FBI and the CIA. Well, FBI isn't it? Or are we talking CIA here for this?
So it depends. So it's in terms of the investigation would be conducted in America by the FBI. They would be the lead agency, but the CIA has obviously many assets around the world, and if there was some sort of collusion between intelligence agencies, they would be aware of it for sure. And I guess I get the shenanigans that we're seeing in terms of, are there files, are there not files, who saw them, who didn't, who's on the lists. To me, that just smacks of a cover up, and it doesn't become any more obvious. And these sort of actions just show how inept the people that are leading the nation and providing advice to the president at the moment are, in my view.
Yeah, well, I guess the issue I have with the whole Epstein situation is that we don't really have all the information, and
Mm,
it's really hard to try and surmise what the hell's gone on without any information at
mm,
our disposal. I mean, we've got flight logs, we've got some flight logs, we haven't been released most of it. From what I'm aware of, it's sickening that the majority of what remains in the Epstein files is, I think, child porn. I think it is what the majority of it is at this point, and to release it is not fair to the victims at all. I mean, it's a lot of it has to do with protecting victims of those crimes.
mm.
Um,
What do you think of just this recent news in the last day or two of Ghislaine Maxwell asking for immunity if she comes forward and gives her evidence. So this is the partner of Epstein, wife, and she allegedly played a role in kind of uh, hooking these younger ladies
yeah,
up
she
with
was
other
the.
men.
I watched the documentary
Yeah.
years ago now, but yeah, she was
So
sort of a puppet master behind a bit of it.
yeah, and so if that is true, if that allegation is true, do you think she should get immunity if she gives up the names of the people that were procuring these girls?
No, absolutely not.
Mm. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch, won't it? I think that it's going to reveal, if they do that, it's going to reveal that there is a cover up, in my view. And they'll be very selective about the rest of the information they allow her to talk about. But we'll see. It's going to be an interesting chapter in that sorry story.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what she had to say, but I mean, that woman's pure evil.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So back to Australia, we've got uh, a complex situation between two parties. You got Liberal and Labor, and I like to kind of imagine them as puppets. Liberal, Labor on each hand, and in the middle is the bureaucracy of government that kind of doesn't change much. And we get one or the other puppet sort of uh, being in power at any one time. Uh, have you been following much to do with these other parties that are starting to, uh, you know, provide other discourse and other policy?
Um, Not so much, to be honest.
Mm. So what I've noticed is that even within the Labor Party, there is divisions regarding things like the AUKUS deal. So I think it was called Labor Against War is like the faction within the Labor Party that are kind of agitating within. There's also, like, in the Australian Greens, there's the End the AUKUS deal type movement that's going on.
Yeah.
Do you, as a younger person navigating Australian society and hoping for a better future, and obviously going to the ballot box from time to time, do you see any of these, uh, outside the two main parties? Do you see anything like the Greens or another grassroots party as actually potentially going to make any difference, or are you a little bit apathetic now? Do you sort of see the landscape as almost, a waste of time to get involved in?
Well, for one, I would seriously hesitate to consider the Greens grassroots to begin with. They
Mm.
are far from grassroots. They are funded George Soros socialist parasites, essentially, in my opinion. But the they offer no that what they bring to the table is probably worse than what we currently have. I mean, definitely worse than what we currently have. They lost the Greens actually are losing popularity to the Labor Party, which to me suggests that the left is actually moderating more than the right at the moment. So the left is actually coming further to the center and the right is moving further to the right. If we're talking about a political spectrum here,
Mm.
um, like I said, One Nation is seeing some serious popularity growth, like they're growing in popularity.
Mm.
Um, Liberal Nationals are in a total wreck at the moment. I don't see them being able to win the next election at this point. I'm
Mm.
not sure what it's going to take for them to win again. I mean, they offer no real alternative to what's currently happening,
Mm.
I think, and as silly as this might sound, it's quite the same in the United States, despite the new leadership. And there's some seriously different approaches to how they deal with issues. Donald Trump is not willing to touch their social security, healthcare. None of these things are having significant change. I mean,
Mm.
the media will paint a picture that he's undoing the social care system, the social security is being demolished, but it's really not. And I think around all around the West, we have a system in place to keep everyone in a there's a safety net in the West where people can survive even if they have nothing. And neither conservatives or um, libertarians, socialists, whatever, are willing to change that because
Yeah.
the we as a population don't want that to change,
Do
and
we do? Yeah, I
that's
agree
across
with
the
you.
board.
I agree with you. So last time we did chat on this platform, we did bring finances up as being, mismanaged in Australia, and that uh, we sort of talked about how taxpayers' money is being misused. We're paying too much tax, and that money should be maybe pulled out of certain social schemes. We talked about that last time. So just to bring it back to this conversation now, um, I guess that's the type of policy that I would like to hear from any future government is, how do we rein in some of this spending of taxpayers' money and put it towards programs that are going to be important in the future, and how do we mobilize our society, maybe not in a military way, but initially how do we just mobilize the average citizens that might be on some sort of entitlement or social payment, to be more productive in the interests of our nation and our future, because that, as you've said, there's not an appetite generally out there to change that social net that we have, whether it's, you know, a Centrelink style payment or, you know, pensions and other things that these, and even healthcare to some degree, some levels of healthcare, you know, a lot of people will shout at me for saying this, but there's some parts of healthcare that maybe don't need as much funding as other parts. There needs to be a you know, a rethink of that sort of thing.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Absolutely.
so just kind of taking that one step forward, we were then talking about the tax rate and how much we're taxed. You know, obviously Australians are one of the highest tax workers in the world. What would your position be on taxation in terms of should the amount we're being taxed be reduced, or should we have a radical rethink about where the money's spent? What's kind of the better solution?
Well, I'm definitely not even going to pretend to be an economist right now or understand these things any more deeply than but it seems to me that there's a the truth is that the the most money that our government spends is on social security networks. So it's our Centrelink, it's our support payments, whatever it is. That eats up the majority of our government's, or the majority of our tax money is, and that's true for every Western country. And like I said, there's many things around that soak up a lot of our tax money, but the most consequential thing we can do is really change it. It has to come from right down the bottom. It has to change from the perspectives of people that, like, children growing up. It's a it's more indicative of like the how our social fabric has kind of fallen to pieces
Mm,
in the last few decades. I mean, there's so many more single mothers now. Like it's hard to, like, a lot of children don't grow up with the best opportunities. Like it,
mm,
I mean, look at the what social media is doing to children. Like there was the whole transgenderism charade where kids were going in and having hormone blockers and all sorts of things. Like it was horrible stuff. But that was all
mm,
fomented by social media, and also it was fomented by our education system and even by our health system,
mm.
which supported these kinds of radical ideologies. It's all just caused damage to our population. Like
Yeah.
it's destructive, and I mean, we look back at when my grandparents or your grandparents were growing up. Like there was the expectation was that if you don't work, you have nothing, and that's how it is. Like it was a very
Yes.
different world back then. But I think we might have gone too far in a certain direction. But that doesn't mean that the rug can be pulled out from underneath everyone now. Like this is
No,
something that
you're
has to
right.
be this is something that has to be worked on over time. And I guess that's why I say it needs to be addressed from the bottom up. Like we need reform on every level to
Mm,
address this issue so that we don't have people relying on the social security net.
yeah.
Like it's more a problem of like people not being ready for it than making the change.
And it's so unsustainable that the change must happen. So the West is going to collapse if it keeps these sort of social programs and uh, financial commitments alive. So that's a chat for another day. But a very important one. How do we get our nation to mobilize, not necessarily militarily, but certainly productively? And
Well, you do it by not taxing the farmers down in Victoria to the point of bankruptcy.
true. And like comes down to, you know, should we be paying less tax, or should our tax money be used in a different way? Now, I'm a subscriber of we're already paying too much tax. So that needs to be reviewed. And then if you're going to review that, then you have to review your whole budget.
Well, I think unfortunately we're getting to the point now, similar to the United States, really as well, where um, immigration needs to be seriously considered, and the amount of people and where these people are coming from needs to be really finely analyzed, maybe reanalyzed. And I, I say that because we can't afford to be importing people that go directly onto our social security network the way that
no,
it has been happening. I think there's been over 1 million people come into our country from overseas. Like
mm,
in the last, well, the Labor Party came to power in 2022. So it's hundreds, if not millions, it's hundreds of thousands of people. And I mean, we're already struggling enough to take care of our own people. We're
mm,
struggling enough to find the money to fund. We don't even have good roads. I mean, you'd think with a population of 24 million people, how the few roads that we do have are shit.
yeah,
So I mean, there's so many things that we can address before we start trying to take care of foreigners.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and that's not coming from any kind of racist perspective. That's just more a realist understanding that we need to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others.
yeah. And I totally agree with you, son. And maybe then if we can't, afford to take in immigrants or refugees or professionals, like there might be professionals because there's gaps in our healthcare system. We can't get enough doctors and things like that. So there's a place for immigration. I guess one of the things that we could do is refocus the money that is being spent on other programs that are not sustainable, could be diverted to building better roads and other things that you've mentioned. But mate, that's something that we can cover in the next chat. I've really enjoyed this one, mate. Thank you very much
Yeah,
for it.
thanks, Dad. I really enjoyed it too.